in the office. I do quite a bit of track training, so around juniors and like have a bit of a professional talk. But because of COVID, I've been hanging out with like my mechanic mates, my bike polo mates, and all of a sudden, like, man, trying to like not swear in meetings. Like, I already said I got shit done, and I'm just going, ah, man. So
You
yeah,
you can curse on this podcast. It's okay.
I will try not to because can you tell my accent?
A
It's
little
not
bit.
Australian.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you work out where I'm from?
Well, okay. I've cheated, so
Oh, you Google stalked me. Never
so,
mind. Yeah.
yeah, I already know. But so you are currently living in Australia, but originally from Ontario, Canada, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And how long have you lived in Australia?
Oh, half my life. So I came out here when I was 18. So straight of '04.
Okay. So you have a mix of an Australian and Canadian accent.
Oh yeah. Like I said, I've been out here half my life, my entire adult life. But yeah, I'm Australian. Like I've got a bouncing kangaroo on my passport, and yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so you originally reached out to me because we thought it would be a pretty funny topic to take on. What if a track sprinter tried an Everest? Which is what we're going to get into in a second. But before we do that, tell me just a little bit about your background in cycling, and how you became aware of the Everesting Challenge in the first place.
Yeah, so I've cycled all my life. Me and my sisters, like on the weekends, like I've got two younger sisters and they've got ADHD, so we weren't allowed to watch TV as kids. So in the summer, basically, the sun would rise, we'd jump on our bikes. I'd grab a backpack with sandwiches in it, and we'd just like ride all day. I'd have a quarter just in case I needed to call my dad, kind of thing. So yeah, it was always on the weekends in summer, always riding the bikes. Once I got a job, I used to ride my bike to work. It's always been my, I guess, transport. So when I moved out to Australia, I was always commuting on my bike. I mostly rode fixed gear just because, yeah, it's easy to maintain. Like one gear, one chain. When that wears out, you keep riding it until something actually breaks. And once it breaks, you kind of just replace the chain ring, replace the chain, and away you go. And yeah, I was doing that for a while. And there was this local club, the Dulwich Hill Bicycle Club, and they do this ride called the Fixie Century. And like, I'm not talking a metric century here, like, I'm talking an imperial century. So the 160 K, so the 100 miles, like from this place called Bundanoon down the Macquarie Pass. So around where the road worlds were, so the hills around there. So we
Okay.
go down and then back up through like the Royal National Park. So that first descent that all the road races had, we climbed that on a fixie. And in order for me to do the Fixie Century, the club made me join the club and learn how to ride track. So all of a sudden I'm this like fixie
Really?
rider. Yeah.
Hey.
Having to become like a legit like bicycle club member and, like following rules and being clipped in and all that. So
So you would not have discovered the track had it not been for wanting to do this 100-mile fixie ride.
yeah.
That's crazy. That's
And the
awesome.
thing is, the velodrome, it's 500 meters from my house. Like I can see it from my bedroom. And I had no idea it was there. Like I lived next to it for a few years and had no idea the velodrome's like right next to me.
And had you ever had an inkling to race bicycles prior to then?
No, I didn't know people race bikes. Like I had
Really?
no idea that, yeah, I didn't know bicycle racing was a thing.
Okay. So then you give it a try. At what point do you realize that you're actually pretty good at this? Was it right,
Um,
or did it develop slowly over time?
it kind of happened. So, Milton, so just outside Toronto, got a velodrome, and it's right next to where my dad lives. And it had been 6, 7 years since I'd actually seen my like parents and family, and I'm like, you know what? I might as well just go home and ride the velodrome there. And I was looking at the times, and I'm like, my sprint times are actually competitive at a national level. Let's race nationals. So yeah,
Oh,
I turned
amazing.
up probably a few months training and got a bronze in the sprint that year. And I'm like, I guess I'm a sprinter.
No kidding. So you had this hidden engine and you just didn't know until you went and tried it.
Oh, I knew not that I had an engine, but I've always been athletic. So I played hockey, I played rugby, I did cross country running, I was a swimmer, I was a gymnast. Like all throughout high school. I was on every single sports team, so I knew I was athletic.
Okay, so it didn't come
Yeah.
completely out of nowhere, but the bike did.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. Like I had no idea that I was going to be any good at that. And actually that year, so when I won nationals, I think I was still doing 15, 20 kilometers or 20,000 kilometers a year. Like I was doing big Ks. And I got a track coach out here, so Carl Brewer, and found a mate in a gym. So Andy at a physio strength and conditioning, like the two of them were basically like, you need to lift weights, drop the Ks. The next year I went down to about 8,000 K in the year and won nationals. So I'm like, oh, here we go.
Wow. Was it really hard to bring the volume down that much?
Oh my God, it was so difficult.
Yeah.
And that's when I found out about Everesting. So I had a few mates, like it was back, so 2013, 2014, back when like Hell's 500 was just getting established. People were just starting to Everest. I had a few mates in Sydney doing it. And I was going out on these adventure rides. And every weekend I would do like 300K. So over the 2 days, hitting up gravel, like just doing these insane rides. So I knew about the Hell's 500 guys because I'm like, oh yeah, I'm doing the same thing. And my sprint coach was basically like, none of that. And then Cycling Tips wrote the article on Everesting, and he's like, don't you dare. So because he said not to, I think I planned like 3 or 4 of them in like over the course of a couple of years. And they never worked out. Yeah, some of the excuses that I had were I had like a sprint race coming up too close, and I knew that if I did Everest, I'd just be trashed and training would be over. I had one that I got pretty much up until the week before, and the hill that I was going to do, there were just bushfires everywhere. And I'm like, I'm not going to go remote when there's bushfires around. So yeah, came up with a whole bunch of excuses, and just while I was like sprinting proper, I never got around to it.
Well, those aren't even really excuses. Like, well, you've got a responsibility to your training program, right? So, like, that's not a regular excuse. Couch wasn't the excuse. So then, what?
Yeah.
You had an awareness of it for quite a while before you were able to actually do it.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
You're
like
sort of ground zero in Australia, right?
oh yeah, like the people, like I guess the pioneers who were just starting to do it, pretty much everyone doing it was they were doing like Taronga Zoo and like Gary Beach, and there was like First Descent, where now those are just like hills that everyone does. And
right, they've been Everested, dozens and dozens of times, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So what opened up the opportunity for you? Was it the pandemic?
It was a mixture of a whole bunch of things. So I won my last Canadian Nats in 2018. Spent all of 2019 basically wearing the maple leaf, doing a victory lap around the world. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to retire like after this. And in the process, I signed on to a UCI trade team, and I didn't retire. So the pandemic happened, and I'm like, okay, sweet. I'm not going to race this year. I'm going to do an Everest. But then Australia didn't get locked down. So there was still racing, there was still training. And I'm like, okay, I'm not going to get a Everest in here. I did another sprint season, did really well. I didn't actually do any international stuff, but hit some local PBs at different tracks, and I was just absolutely smashing it. And there was this one race at the state champs where it was me and like a good mate, Selena. We were going into like this final corner of the sprint race, like just shoulder to shoulder. And next thing I knew, went straight up the track, nearly took her out. I was a gymnast in the 90s. I'm broken. And I had like I've got ankle issues, and one of the bone shards in one of my ankles had just shifted, and all of a sudden just shooting pain up my leg, and I lost control of my bike.
Really?
And we didn't come down, we didn't come together. Like it was pretty safe. But at that point, I'm like, I need to fix this. I'm like, if my like riding's being affected by an injury, I can't actually ride that injury anymore. Because up until that point, I'm like, don't need it. Who cares? So
you're compensating and figuring it out. Yeah,
like I could still do everything, but it was that one race incident where I'm like, okay, need to get this fixed. So I had the ankle surgery, and Sydney went into another lockdown. I'm like, okay, sweet. if I'm recovering from this and sitting on the like stationary trainer, we're going to be in a long lockdown. I can do an Everest now. So yeah, it seemed like the thing to do because I had nothing else better to do. And I wasn't actually training because I was recovering. And I didn't quite think through the Everest thing because I'm like, oh yeah, I can do 100K here, 100K there, like no worries. I can climb hills, but I've never climbed anything like as big as Everest. And I'm like, oh yeah, I've tapered off. I've rested myself. I can just do an Everest, like wake up one morning and yeah, it'll be good recovery.
And so did you select a hill carefully? Like, did you know for a long time what your hill would be, or did you, was it sort of spontaneous?
Um, ooh, it actually had a lot to do with the Sydney lockdowns.
Okay.
Yeah, like we were only allowed to ride within your local government area. So it's like a little suburb that you're in or a 10K radius from your house. So I
Pretty
live
tight.
next to the airport. Like it is flat where I live.
Oh,
And I had a 10K radius of my house where I could choose a hill. And the hill needs to be like a quiet hill because I'm dead smack in the middle of the city as well. So it needed to be quiet. It needed to have like amenities. Like I needed all those things. And my hill choices were fairly limited. There's actually a climb across the road from my house in a park. It's called Sandwich Climb, but they're putting a new highway in and it's been taken over by construction.
okay.
And I was originally going to do that one. It would have been 680 reps of this, just like
Oh,
vertical up and down hill. I was going to do it on my fixie. It was going to be great. And yeah, because it was under construction, I'm like, nope, can't do that one.
680. That would have been tough.
Yeah, actually, the one that I did, so I chose Oatley Hill, St. George Cycling Club. Um, that's the club that I'm currently in. They have like weekend road handicaps. So they start the different bunches at different times. It's kind of like a crit circuit, but Oatley Park, you're either going up a hill, down a hill, or up and down a hill.
Okay.
Like there is no resting. Oatley's brutal. And the main feature of that course is the Oatley Hill. So you go from the flower pot to this top gate, and I hate that hill. You do it 8 times in the race, and I'm usually like in tears. It's a 24K race, and I'll spend the entire time above like 180, 190, like beats per minute, like heart rate. It's just, you die. And I hate that hill. So I chose that one as my Everest because it was in my 10K radius.
Perfect. And how long is the hill?
It's 800 meters. Like it's not long. So
Okay.
it's
800. And how many meters of ascent each time?
32.
Oh,
I had to do
32,
281 laps.
281 laps.
Yeah.
Wow. Oof. Okay. So tell me about the day of. It sounds like you went into it uh, pretty confident. How did it go?
Yeah, so I told you about the ankle reconstructions. That was round one. Just before I went to go do the hill, I actually decided to break my collarbone. So, sorry?
On the bike?
Yeah, I was coming home from the gym. I was rolling down the hill. I was in a moon boot still because riding bikes in a moon boot is a thing. And yeah, I'd say taking it easy, but I was going probably about 50 kilometers an hour, just keeping up with traffic, like just cruising it. And looked over my shoulder because I needed to change lanes while going through an intersection. And by the time I looked forward again, the car in front of me had its like brake lights on, and I grabbed brake and up and over the handlebars. Didn't get a scratch on the moon boot. Didn't lose any skin. Like it was great. Shattered my keep cup, shaking myself off, and got to the side of the road just to make sure everything was okay, and wiggled the shoulder, and it was just crunchy. And I'm like, oh. So that was round one of me doing the Everest.
Wow. Okay. And then how long did that take to heal?
Not, or I say not very long. So I got a plate put on it, so I was good to go. Probably month and a half later, something like that. But the problem with that is Sydney went into an even deeper lockdown, and it went from a 10K radius to a 5K radius. So I could no longer actually do Oatley Hill. So it wasn't on the schedule.
Okay.
Yeah, so I spent probably another month or so at home rehabbing. So Andy, my mate at the gym, was giving me like home workout stuff. I was sitting on the stationary trainer because the Tour de France was on, and yeah, kind of just tipping things over, and Freedom Day came. So I think it was after 100 and something days of like really strict lockdown. We had Freedom Day, and I'm like, okay, sweet, Freedom Day. I'm going out and doing the Everest. And yeah, I did a few local hills ahead of time just to see if I could actually ride hills. So I did in like my 5K radius,
Yeah.
an Imperial Century of yeah, just these local hills. And I was trashed. Like I got home from that and I'm like, never again. Like I'm not doing this. And yeah, the next week I went out and did an Everest. So
You almost talked yourself out of it and then went and did it anyways.
I didn't talk myself out of it. I just knew that the Imperial Century of Hills was a bad idea. Didn't know that Everest was a bad idea because, yeah.
What was the total distance of your Everesting though? That was way over a century, right?
Oh, yeah, it was 467K.
Doing the math in my head here, your hill was not steep enough.
No, not at all.
Not,
Yeah.
not at all. That's something I learned too. My Everesting was 324 kilometers, which was the 200 miles. Too long. Go steeper, and you did quite a bit more. Oh.
Yeah. Oh, but the thing is, I did it on a steel road bike with fenders, solo, unsupported. Like, yeah, it was just me in this hill and having fun. Had a
So
few mates come and heckle me.
packed up the car, got all your food, nutrition, hydration, all that stuff ready to go, and you just went and start. What time of the day did you start at?
Oh, so I don't have a car.
Okay.
Yeah, so I don't have a car.
Car,
Basically,
yeah.
I had a backpack and 2 wheel bags. And yeah, so halfway, or not halfway, probably about 3/4 up this climb, there was like a little no parking pole. So I had everything like chained to that. And yeah, it just sat there all day and I'd kind of just like swap things over as I needed them. And yeah, so
So,
going back to your question of when it started,
when did you start?
I started at midnight. Yeah, so I did one of those, start at midnight, because the plan was you start at midnight, get the nighttime session over early, and then I was supposed to finish just after sunset, which didn't happen. So I ended up with 2 night shifts. But the day actually started just like every other day. So I woke up about 5 in the morning so that I could get ready to do a day's worth of work. In order for me to actually wake up the day before, do the working from home thing, and then start the Everest at midnight, I had no coffee. Like, I'm caffeinated. Like, I'm forever just sipping on coffee. So I did no coffee. And I think it was 2 in the afternoon, or probably about 1 in the afternoon. I closed all the blinds in my apartment, so it became dark. Stopped looking at my phone, just was reading, a little bit quiet. At 1:30, had a really hot shower, basically did my bedtime routine at 1 in the afternoon. And yeah, put myself to sleep at 2, set my alarm for 10 o'clock at night. And yeah, alarm went off at 10, woke up and had a coffee, ate breakfast, had a coffee, ate some more food, had a coffee, jumped on the train, and yeah, away I went.
I went and got after it. So how many hours were you there for? What was your elapsed time and your moving time?
My elapsed time was 23 hours. And my
Okay.
moving time was actually, I think it was 22:19 or something.
Oh, you took no breaks.
I didn't stop. So it Freedom Day was a really bad day to start an Everest. Like, Sydney weather was filthy. There were thunderstorms. It was raining. Like, it was just really bad weather. And yeah, I actually ended up doing it a few days later. And a thunderstorm had actually just rolled through the area, literally minutes before I got there. And my descent, it was foggy. Like, I couldn't see a thing. And like I started 10 minutes early. So I'm like, sweet, I'm at least one lap ahead of schedule. And yeah, no, I didn't realize how much a wet, foggy descent would slow you down, especially the turnaround points. Like you couldn't turn around at any speed because I didn't want to stack it, especially if no one was there and I'd just broken a collarbone.
Exactly. I know. And then you start to think about like the potential for making a mistake late in the day, like a tight turn that you can normally do kind of in your sleep, especially as a track cyclist. You've got really good bike handling skills, obviously, but you can start to make mistakes as you get more and more fatigued. So my turns were getting wider and wider, and I think a lot of people do that if they have the space to do it right. Or I've seen people stopping, unclipping, flipping the
Oh,
bike,
wow.
and going back up. I wouldn't want to do that 281 times though. Maybe on longer hills, that's okay.
Yeah, actually, the worst is so I'm a track rider. To quote Derek Zoolander, I am not an ambi turner. I can only turn left. And because of the way the roads are in Australia, we ride on the like other side to
Yeah.
Canada. So all my turns, I was turning right. I can't turn right. So I had to turn right 281 times when I couldn't.
No, times two. I mean, you did
Or
it. You did it
yeah,
two 575.
400. Yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
man.
that's
I'm
people.
still not an ambi turner.
That's so fun. Even after all those practice turns.
Yeah.
So what? How would you rate the overall effort and experience based on what you thought it would be like?
Um, so the first 200 laps, so the first 200 miles, it was easy. Like I was doing fine. It was yeah, a really good ride. The hill itself, I basically was just tapping it over, and yeah, the first 200 laps, it was easy, and I was actually really enjoying it. I had no music, so it was just really relaxing. It was therapeutic. After all the lockdown, like all I wanted to do was like get out of my house and like
Yeah.
I wanted to hurt myself on the bike, and I was just thoroughly enjoying all of that, and that was great. So I'd probably rate the first 200 laps off, probably about 7. So it was challenging, but it definitely wasn't difficult. And yeah, then it went downhill. Like it went downhill really fast. It would have been about 5 in the afternoon, and my stomach stopped being able to process food.
This seems
And
to be a common problem for anybody doing 24-hour events or Everestings, right?
yeah, and like I knew it was going to be an eating competition, so I had like a bunch of musettes in my wheel bag, and every 4 hours I was grabbing another musette, and I was eating basically Twiggy sticks. So because when I race, I eat Twiggy sticks. So I'm like, yeah, I can eat those. So Twiggy sticks, so like the little pepperettes.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was eating those, and I make these like ultimate brownies where it's like cookie dough on the bottom, Mars bars in the middle with like brownie batter on top. Baked those and had those divided into like 24 little squares. I was having one of those in a Twiggy stick each hour, along with a coffee and a water bottle. So I'm like, okay, everything's sorted. And next thing I knew, the stomach was just like rejecting food, and I hadn't had a break at this point. So yeah, it just went downhill really fast. And
So what did you do? Did you not eat, or did you find a different fuel source?
no, I had a chunder, and I didn't eat for the rest of the Everest, which eh, it's fine. You don't need to eat. I'd eaten already. So yeah, if the stomach didn't want food, obviously the body didn't need food. So every not couple laps, but every now and then I'd pull over and have another chunder and get the stomach bile up and keep going. And at sunset, my husband actually did come, so he made sure that after so the second night shift, I didn't die actually going down the hill. But
It gets
um,
does get dangerous. That's always a concern, and I'm glad that you had that at top of mind for sure. The descending in
yeah,
the dark and the fatigue, it's a lot. So, and it doesn't sound like at any point you considered quitting.
No, not at all.
on-
Yeah, like I knew that it was going to happen. It just was a matter of how long it was going to take for it to happen. Yeah.
Okay, so then the big question, would you do it again?
No, asterisks.
Explain.
Oh, so remember that track coach that I was telling you about who was saying absolutely not, like, don't do an Everest? He's been heckling me and love him to pieces, but oh, my God, he's been heckling me. The heckles have been, you will not do it on your penny farthing. And
Oh,
I'm like, I will not do it on my penny farthing, looking up hills. He mentioned you shouldn't do it on your penny farthing, looking up more hills. I mentioned it to Penny Farthing Dan. He's a dude out in Australia who builds penny farthings. And I'm like, hey Dan, I think I might do an Everest on my penny farthing. And he's like, that's a great idea. I love hills. And I'm going, oh shit. Sorry for
it's
swearing.
a great idea.
Yeah.
It's a massive turn though, don't you?
Oh yeah, because it's a 47-inch front wheel.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
yeah. And the thing is,
Reached out to Andy
descending.
to ask him if anybody's ever done an Everesting on a penny farthing.
Yeah.
I
it's a bad idea.
I feel like it's a no though. I think it'd be a first. I am fully in favor of you doing it.
Yeah, the thing is, Dan's in favor of it. A couple other guys who ride pennies are like, oh, when can we do this? So we're looking up hills right now, and it's not anytime soon because I've got a bunch of once again, sprinting is getting in the way. I've got some UCI sprint races in Australia and New Zealand over Christmas, and it's not going to happen anytime soon because I need to be sprinting, but it's definitely on the to plan list.
Okay, then having you back on this podcast will be on the to plan list. We're going to have so many questions about that, about gearing and about equipment and what you might be doing to customize your penny farthing for this effort. Like my mind's 100 different directions already on this. So I will definitely have you back because that sounds epic.
So for the gearing, you got no choice.
You
It's
can't.
direct drive.
Yeah. So, and it's just based on the relation of the
My
size.
leg length.
Okay.
Yeah. Like I can literally only ride one size wheel because that's my
So
size.
how steep of a hill could you handle on it, like repeatedly?
Um
The gradient. See, this is a whole other podcast. This is
yeah. So we did a tour in Tasmania back in February, and we were doing like some mountain passes like in Tasmania, like they sucked. You'd actually get off and walk a few little sections, but yeah, we were hitting about 1,500 like vertical each day, like doing hundreds of Ks. And so we can do some pretty gnarly hills on the pennies. Not easily, but it's doable.
amazing.
And the hill that was thrown around was it's only 7 laps of Hotham.
And
So
okay. And what's the average gradient of that hill?
I think Hotham's it's not much. Like I think it's about 5, but
Okay.
it does have pitches of I think 12 to 15. Like it's a 30K ascent. And the problem with that is a 30K descent on a penny farthing. You're standing on the 2 foot pegs, holding onto your handlebars, like trying to coast with your foot on the rear wheel, trying to slow yourself down because there's no brakes on those.
Right.
And yeah.
And yeah, and I have so many questions. Like, and I'm assuming the wind is a bigger consideration when you're up on a penny farthing, right? Like on a windy day, I think, or is it about the same?
Yeah, it's about the same. Headwinds suck, but cross and tailwinds about the same as when you're on a regular bike. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for doing this. Absolute pleasure to have you on, and I hope that I can have you back. I hope I'll have a read. It sounds like I will. So, like I said,
Yeah.
favorite stuff, people would eat that up. So I want to hear more about it as your plans come together. But good luck with the upcoming racing, okay?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it.